Bill O'Reilly has been fired by Fox News. So this is the end of a 20-year reign on air. I believe from 1996 and on, he was part of Fox News. He's the number one show. This is something, many people on the left might not even know this, but he's number one in cable news. I use the term news loosely because we're talking about Bill O'Reilly and Fox News. But for a very, very long time, he was number one in the ratings. He's going out number one in the ratings. So let me go ahead and give you some of the details on this. They explain Bill O'Reilly has been forced out of his position as a primetime host at Fox News, the company said on Wednesday, after the disclosure of settlements involving sexual harassment allegations against him. His abrupt and embarrassing ouster ends his two-decade reign as one of the most popular and influential commentators in television. After a thorough and careful review of the allegations, the company and Bill O'Reilly have agreed that Bill O'Reilly will not be returning to the Fox News channel. 21st Century Fox, the parent company of Fox News, said in a statement. Mr. O'Reilly is departing 2.5 weeks after an investigation by the New York Times revealed how Fox News and 21st Century Fox have repeatedly stood by him even as sexual harassment allegations against him mounted. The Times found that the company and Mr. O'Reilly have reached settlements with 5 women who had complained about sexual harassment or other inappropriate behavior by him. The agreements totaled about $13 million. Since then, more than 50 advertisers had abandoned his show, and women's rights groups had called for his ouster. Inside the company, women expressed outrage and questioned whether top executives were serious about maintaining a culture based on trust and respect, as they had promised last summer, when another sexual harassment scandal led to the ouster of Roger E. Ailes as chairman of Fox News. So here's the reality. The first allegations surfaced about a decade ago, actually over a decade ago. And of course, they stuck by him. The thing that really did O'Reilly in this time is not that there were sexual allegations, against him. And not even that we learned about the sexual allegations against him. The thing that really did him in was the advertiser saying, we're done. We're out. Because this is what happened with Glenn Beck also. Glenn Beck had a lunatic show at 5 o'clock on Fox News, and his ratings were soaring. I mean, they were through the roof, and he would have his goofy chalkboard and connect the dots, and Van Jones is a Marxist, and Saul Alinsky, and blah, blah, blah. He would just make these absurd claims. They're just nowhere near correct. Fox did not care. They only cared when he finally said, I think he said on Fox and Friends one time that Obama's racist against white people. And then finally advertisers were like, okay, that's it. We're gone. This is too inflammatory. And that's when he ended up getting fired, is when you lose the advertiser. So that's the key thing. It also happened to Bill Maher, by the way. Bill Maher, Politically Incorrect, was his show on Comedy Central first and then ABC. And Bill Maher famously said, look, the people who flew the planes into the World Trade Center, call them what you want. They're evil, they're terrible, they're barbaric, they're savage. They're not cowards. A coward doesn't stay in a plane as it hits a building. Now, people interpreted that as him saying, they're not evil. But again, he stressed, no, they're evil, but don't call them cowardly because that's just not true. But that generated sufficient outrage where advertisers fled, and his ratings went up after he said that. So his ratings were high, but the advertisers fled. So that's when it's lights out on hosts like this. So that's the real reason why they're letting him go, is that they think, hey, he made us money for a really long time, but now he's just flat out going to cost us money. Even with the $13 million that they paid out for the sexual assault allegations, that's a drop in the bucket. When we talk about 50 advertisers fleeing, that's going to amount to way more than that. So that's why he left. And, it's crazy because I was speaking about this yesterday. Bill O'Reilly, I always thought he's, as far as how he presents, he was the king of cable news. Because he seemed to be like one of those people where when he talks, you listen. You're like, you can't help, but your attention just goes to him and then you listen. Whereas with other hosts who are not as good hosts, they'll talk and it just kind of floats out into the ether and it doesn't land. They don't have a way of talking that can really connect to the audience. Now, by the way, that's to say nothing about the substance of what he was saying, because the substance is preposterous. But the way he talks, he was a great presenter. And that's one of the main reasons why he was so giant for so long. Guys like Rush Limbaugh, paper tiger, he still cites his ratings numbers from the 90s to pretend he's popular. He's not popular. Glenn Beck now on The Blaze, same thing, not popular at all. Nobody watches. Bill O'Reilly actually was popular, but he was popular, of course. So the demographic, like the average viewer of his show is like 70 years old or something crazy. So it's all like really old white dudes, but he was able to get enough of them to make him number one. Now, the main point I want to stress here, though, is we live in a crazy world because... So this is the stuff that brings him down, but Bill O'Reilly was probably the number one proponent and propaganda master when it came to the Iraq War. Night after night after night, he would hammer away at Democrats, at secular progressives, as he called them, in a derisive way. He didn't like we would say, yeah, I'm secular progressive. He means a secular progressive. He means it in a negative context and connotation. But he would hammer away and basically make the argument that if you don't want to go into Iraq, you're unpatriotic, you don't want to protect the United States of America, you don't care about the victims of 9/11, and he would just make the case Saddam was in bed with Al-Qaeda and made a deal with Osama bin Laden. And then when that became not viable anymore, he moved the goalposts. Like everybody, he has weapons of mass destruction. He has weapons of mass destruction. And then when that fell through, he moved the goalposts again to finally talk about Saddam's a bad guy. He's a really bad dictator. And then they would smear all the opponents of the Iraq War as Saddam lovers. Like, oh, you like Saddam Hussein? You don't think Saddam Hussein did atrocities? And of course, those people be like, no, we despise him, and we know he did atrocities, but he didn't wage an attack against the U.S., so it's not our place to go topple him. What, should we topple every person who's a bad guy, who's a bad leader? And I'm not kidding when I say he was probably the number one propagandist on the Iraq War. I mean, whatever came out of Dick Cheney's mouth and the Bush administration, he would loyally report it as if it was fact. He was a stenographer to power, and he was very sharp and harsh in his tone. So this is a guy who really drove the narrative of the Iraq War and was a staunch defender of it, even years upon years upon years into the Iraq War. There was never any consequence for that, ever. It was never like, oh, hold on here, we have a guy who's number one in cable news, who was the chief propagandist that led us into an illegal war that killed a minimum hundreds of thousands of people. He was a defender of torture. None of that stuff was ever like, okay, come on, let's be serious here. We're violating our journalistic integrity by having such a monster be a leading voice. None of that ever mattered. What matters is he maybe did sexual assault. And again, it wasn't even the sexual assault that really mattered. It's the fact that there was enough of an outrage over that to then make the advertisers go, okay, we're out. So I just think we live in a weird world where it's like warmongering endlessly, lying us into war. It happens. But, oh my God, maybe there was sexual assault, fired. So, but that's not to say I'm not against him leaving, because a guy like Bill O'Reilly, how detrimental his voice has been in the national conversation. But again, it's not even that his voice has been detrimental, because those people have a right to speak too, of course. But they don't have a right to a giant platform, and when they lie us into war and defend torture and things of that nature, it's just that he's not doing his job in what it actually is. Like, that's not... You can't say, I am on a news channel, and I am going to say all these things that are false, and then if you tell me, hey man, you shouldn't say those things that are false, social justice warrior. Oh my God, look at this guy, political correctness run amok. No, I'm correcting your ass because you're saying things that aren't factual. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, well, not being factual is just politically incorrect. No, it's not politically incorrect, it's incorrect. That's what it is. And by the way, I know I hate getting into this stuff, but I'll give you guys just a few examples of what he's done. Going way back, he had unwanted phone sex with like one of his producers. He would call her and she said it would sound like he's masturbating, and he would tell her all the things that he wants to do to her, and she was not a willing participant. And there are tapes of this. Oh, God, those tapes. How gross would that be to listen to those? So, for anybody who says, like, well, allegations doesn't equal guilt. Of course, allegations don't equal guilt. But does that mean that everybody who has an allegation against them is not guilty? No. And Bill O'Reilly is one where it fits his character and it fits a sequence of events here. There's many women that this is piling up. All of it is piling up, and we have the original evidence of the old tapes, and that's one of the reasons why there was a payout involved with that particular case, because it was like, yeah, we actually have it on tape, so there's no escaping this. We know you're guilty. One of them involved, he would always promise these poor women that, oh, you stick with me, I'm going to get you far in this business. You want to be a star? I can make you a star. He would take one of them out to dinner. One of them was like, okay, look, but just business. We're just doing business here. He'd be like, yeah, sure, just business. And then he would make a move on them at dinner, and one of these women rebuffed and said, I thought we were really having a business conversation here. I'm here under that pretext. And then they sat at the bar or something, and she said, look, I'm going to go because this isn't what I was thinking about all this. And O'Reilly was like, fine, then you're never going to get anywhere in this business, and I'll make sure that you're fired. And by the way, your bag is ugly. And he would storm out. Like, look, there's some of them, maybe, I don't know all the details, but some of them you could say, hey, it was just, a poor attempt at a hookup, which is not a crime, of course. But some of the stories obviously cross that line into, no, this is sexual harassment and sexual assault in some instances. So that's where we're at right now. Bill O'Reilly, he's going out the number one show. He still is number one in cable news with his ratings. And he released a statement where he was like, "This is sad. It's unfortunate that we're going out under we're breaking up effectively, him and Fox News, under these circumstances with unfounded allegations." So he's trying to go down swinging. Who knows where he goes next? Is it possible he starts a podcast or something or try to do something online? Sure. Won't do nearly as well as his show on Fox News did because his demographic is really, really, really old, and those people typically do not listen to podcasts. So if he were to come on the internet, it'd probably be a mistake. If he were to go to some other outlet, I mean, look, it's possible that he goes to One America News Network or The Blaze, but I doubt The Blaze because O'Reilly's going to cost a lot. He's going to ask for a lot, and Glenn Beck does not have that kind of money. Nor would Bill O'Reilly want Glenn Beck to be his boss. Or maybe, Donald Trump's his boy. They go to basketball games together. That's literal. Is there so? Would Donald Trump do that? I mean, Donald Trump got caught saying, "I grab him by the pussy. I don't even wait." Is he gonna, move away from his buddy Bill O'Reilly now that Bill O'Reilly's fired under these circumstances? I don't think he'll have any kind of moral objection to Bill O'Reilly and what he did. So perhaps there is some kind of spot for him in the administration. I don't know. Or maybe Bill just retires. But it strikes me that a guy like Bill O'Reilly is one who doesn't, I mean, he has to go into the darkness for at least 6 months or a year, but he doesn't strike me as one who would be cool with just sitting at home and watching some TV and sipping a drink out on his porch. I doubt that. So we'll see what happens. But Bill O'Reilly is officially out skis at Fox News.